Good afternoon. Can you hear me? All right. Good afternoon, Chicago. It took me 6 years to get my Ph.D. at Loyola in Chicago, and people say, how come so fast? I said, I am a Cuban. Cold weather and Cubans just don't match. I couldn't wait to get out of here. So that's a great motivator to finish your degree faster. I need to tell you something about me is I'm not very politically correct, so if I say something that really ticks, well, you're old men, so I can say it. If it really pisses you off, don't worry about it, you'll get over it. It's a lot better to be pissed off than pissed on. So, and I'm working a lot of years. You know, in America, when somebody meets somebody, the first thing they, in a social circle, in a business circle, the first thing that they ask each other is like, well, where did you go to school? So your identity here in America is based upon your school. For us Hispanics, it's a lot different. Our identity is based upon who our ancestors are. You know, who my grandfather, who my mother's father was, my dad's father, the town we came from, and that's my identity. Well, being in America, so when they ask me is like, well, where did you go to school? I said, well, as a young man, prior to the video, I went to school at the University of Miami to get an accounting degree. Then I went and got a bachelor's degree in Bible from Southeastern College. Then a master's degree from Wheaton College. People know about Wheaton College here? You know, not too far. You know, Billy Graham went to Wheaton College, and Jesus went there too. So I went to Wheaton College. Then I got my Ph.D. at Loyola, but my real theological training happened at Yale. And when I say that, for whatever reason, people's eyes jumped up and said, wow, really smart, man. Ivy League, Yale. I said, no, not Yale, jail, federal prison. 10 years. You know, we look at the world and we hear all these things that are going on, and I'm going to reduce my topic to two things. I don't have an answer to anything in life. I'm 64, still trying to figure out my life. But I'm going to tell you about two things that really resonate big time in my life. And I want that to be the theme of my talk. Number one is the saying that Jesus said to his disciples, be not afraid, right? Be not afraid, because I am with you. That's number one. Number two, a saying that Jorge Valdes says, when the pages of history are written, you need to ask yourself, will history ever remember your name? I repeat, when the pages of history are written, will history ever remember your name? Now, some of us don't give a darn. We just want to go through life. We're complacent, and we're happy. You know, we live, we die, and nothing ever changes. We didn't impact nothing. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to realize if we want history to remember our name, like I want history to remember my name, the only way history will remember my name is not because of what I did there, or the house that I built, or the car that I drive, or the big business that I built. History will only remember my name for the lives that I have impacted for Christ. But see, there is no way in the world that history will ever remember any of our names if we are afraid. If we are afraid. You know, my story started in Cuba at the age of 10. I come from wealthy parents, and we lived a good life. And all of a sudden, one morning, October 11th, 1966, my mother wakes us up in a rush and says, get dressed, get dressed. I had no idea. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, what was going on. So I started to get dressed, and then I went to grab something. She said, no, we're leaving. Just the clothes on your back, son. She woke up my brother, who was 9, and my sister 5, and I had no clue what was going on. It was the first moment in my life. I look at my life as 3 cataclysmic moments. That was the first moment, because as we're heading to the airport in Havana, all of a sudden, I have no idea why am I leaving my friends, something very important to a little kid, his toys, our relatives, and we're headed to this land, which he calls Miami, where we're going to be able to worship God freely. My mother was a very, very committed Catholic woman, Mass daily. My dad was a typical Catholic man in Cuba, probably Catholic man today. You know, we are Catholic because we call ourselves Catholic. But the truth of the matter is that if we are in a circle of people that consider themselves atheists, We know exactly that they are atheists because they make no beef about it like I did. I was an atheist for a lot of years. So we can determine immediately who the atheists are, but ain't it sad? We cannot determine who the Christians are in the majority. You know, I always say, if we were ever tried for being a Christian, would there ever be enough evidence to convict any of us? So we headed to the airport, and at the airport, all of a sudden, being Valdez, we're privileged to always go last. And as I see that everybody's loaded the airplane, I see my mother coming, and she's crying. And she's like, my dad is saying, no, I'm not going. I have no idea what's going on. My mother comes, grabs my hand, grabs the hand of my brother, and my sister said, Jorge, take him to Miami. I'll see you one day. My world shattered that moment because see you one day, Miami, where are we going? Why are you leaving? You're the nucleus, you're the center of our home. I bet you by the age of 10 in Cuba, I had never spoken more than 10 sentences to my father. He was under that old mentality. Kids were meant to be seen, never to be heard. You know, he was a very, very man of tremendous integrity and respect, but we didn't have dialogue with him. If I ever wanted to ask my father something, I had to ask my mother for permission to get an appointment with my father at the age of 8, 9, or 10. But as I'm walking towards the airplane, literally as a zombie, I see my father coming, and we joined us, and we landed in Miami, and 11 of us went to sleep in a one-bedroom apartment. All of a sudden, where our house was 1 square block, 11 of us were sleeping in a one-bedroom apartment, 9 of us sleeping in the floor, and 11 of us writing down a sheet of paper what time we were going to piss, because everybody had to go to the bathroom, everybody had to go to work, had to go to school. So for me, there was no God. God was introduced to me very, very quickly the second day of being in Miami. When all of a sudden I see my cousin coming, he's got this gorgeous candy apple red GTO with a white interior. I can see that car today just like I saw it October 13th of 1966. And immediately at the age of 10, I saw my cousin come in that car, and I said to myself, if my cousin's only been here about a year and a half before me and already has this beautiful car, the day I have a car like that, I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to make it. See, I met the American dream. I met the American dream that I bought into, and I would venture to say many of us in this room right now have also bought into. See, the American dream that told me, George, when you have all this stuff, when you have those beautiful houses and the beautiful cars and the gorgeous women and the vacation homes, then you're going to be happy. Because, see, that's the American dream we sell to our kids today, right? We abandon our family, we abandon our marriages, we abandon our kids. Why? Because we want to give them nice things. We want to give them a vacation home. We want to give them 3 cars. We want to give them a brand new car when they turn 16. And see, the thing about it is, reality is, we're so wrong. Our kids don't want any of that. The only thing that our kids really, really want cost us nothing, and we just cannot give it to them. Our time. Our time. So we complain when our kids go away, but the truth of the matter is, where were we? So we go through life. I went through life like that, and you know, my dad, it was a man of, like I said, tremendous integrity. My dad refused to take any help from the government. He would give us 2 raw eggs in the morning with some powdered milk from Vietnam that never mixed. And I'm like, till today, I cannot drink no milk. And we'd go off to school till dinner time. But I remember the first week in school, I found out this friend of mine, he comes in, I'm like, hey, George. His name was George, too. I said, how is it that you bring a sandwich to school? We have no money. And he's like, oh, we get food stamps. I said, you get what? He said, food stamps. Man, I was so excited. I went home when my dad came from work. Here's my dad, who at the age of 30 was a multimillionaire in Cuba. He was cleaning toilets at J. Byron's, the equivalent of J.C. Penney's, as a janitor for 80 cents an hour, and never complained one day in his life. I said, Dad, my friend George has lunch because he has food stamps. Do you know about that? My dad says, yes. I said, well, Dad, how come we don't get food stamps? He looked at me very stoic and said, son, because food stamp is for poor people. I'm like, holy crap. We're so damn poor, we still got to work our way to poor? Once we get there, we might be able to get food. What the hell do you call where we're at? I said, Dad, you mean we're not poor? He said, no, son. I said, then what do you call where we at? He's like, we just don't have any money. I said, Dad, you know, I'm only 10 years old, but I think it's the same thing. He's like, no, son. The poor person that takes aid from the government will stay poor all their life. And I'm going to tell you something, son. And I saw that day like I'm speaking to you today. He put his finger on my chest and said, you get up and you figure how to help your family eat. Man, I was 10. I was skinny as a rail, weighed probably 70 pounds, soaking wet. But I did. I did get up, and I delivered newspapers, and I washed cars, and I cut grass, and we had just barely enough to eat, but we were happy. It was probably the happiest moments in my life. And people look back and like, oh, you got to be kidding me, the life that you have lived? I said, it was the happiest moment of our life, because we had something that all the millions and millions of dollars I made never gave me. We had unity. We had meaning, and we had love, and we struggle. And you know, struggle is not a bad thing. When we struggle as a family, we unite as a family. The problem is, when struggle comes, all we are is afraid. And we cry, and we bitch, and we moan. And I went through life working really hard. At the age of 17, I was the youngest employee in the Federal Reserve Bank. I went to the University of Miami at night, and I went and I worked full-time for the Federal Reserve Bank in the morning. At the age of 20, my accounting professor, as I was graduating, said to me, hey, George, I got a great idea for you. Why don't you come work for me? I'll give you secretary. I'll give you office. He had come to Miami. He did not speak Spanish. And this is something very important for you all to know. You know why the Legion speaks Spanish? Because that is the language we'll talk in heaven. You know that, right? That's what the evangelicals, as Father Bartolo call it, tongues. But the truth of the matter is just Spanish. It's just plain Spanish. If you want to communicate in heaven, you better start speaking Spanish because you're going to be mute. So he didn't speak Spanish, and he told me, hey, do my Spanish class, and I did. And I'll never forget, the first business was exactly the width of this stage and this length. And I go in there, was a little grocery store that you saw there on the video called La Puerta del Sol. And I walked in there, and I was so happy because I was going to get paid $1,000 a month. Now, I'm making big money at the Federal Reserve Bank at that time, $3.25 an hour. You know, the minimum wage was about $1.10, so I'm 3 times minimum wage. So I got a big government job. I'm a big shot, and they're going to pay me $1,000 for 1 hour, 1 day a week. So I go in there, and I start doing, I organizing all the files, and all of a sudden, the owner brings me $100,000 in a paper sack. This is 1976 now. So I take the $100,000, and I'm like, wow, man, I've never seen $100,000. I'm like, this must have been all the sales. They've been saving and waiting for me to come and do the accounting. But where are the receipts? It's only about $400 worth of receipts. So I'm like, I'm missing something, but come back. I set up all the journals. You know, back then it's not like a computer. You know, there's no QuickBooks back then. It was just double-entry journals. Anybody who's an accountant will tell you. But I did that, and the following week I come, and there's $85,000. Now, I'm so naive, I have no clue what the hell's going on. So I'm like, you know, but I'm like, when I left that day, well, before I left, I went to the Campbell Soups, and I picked one up, and it was nice and dusty. I picked it up with a V for Valdes, of course, and I put it back. I want to see how many times they sold the damn soup, because a week before, I thought I still sold the same soup in the shelf. So I come back the third week, and when he hands me $120,000, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. As he's handing me the money, I said, Abro, we got to talk. I said, look, I know you don't know anything about accounting. Actually, didn't even know how to read or write. I said, but in accounting, it's really simple. You buy that can for $1, and when you sell it for $3, you made $2 profit. And he's like, okay. I said, well, the problem is, this 3 weeks have recorded close to $300,000, and all you've sold is about $600. See, I didn't know anything about Jesus multiplying fishes and all that and feeding 5,000. If I did, I would say, man, Jesus, you ain't got nothing on this Colombia, man. They still got the same soup and got nowhere, and they got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the guy starts laughing in my face. And he's like, oh, George. Now, if you looked at a picture of a nerd in the dictionary, that was me. I mean, I I had bottle glasses. I had braces. I had long hair. He says, we're drug dealers. And imagine how much it bothered me. Here's a kid that had never done any drugs in his life, never seen drugs in my life. All I ever did is work full time, go to school full time. All the alcohol in my life fit in a teacup. All of a sudden, find out I'm working for drug dealers. You know how long it took me? It took me about 10 seconds to get over it. And that's how long, it takes many of us to cross a line. See, I had designed lines in my life that I would never cross. I had the same girlfriend for 3 years, and we'd go to a party, and if I opened that door and I saw smoke, I mean, it could have been incense. I didn't care. If I saw smoke, I left because I couldn't compromise my position. I was set on what I was going to be. I was graduate at 20. At 23, I was going to get out of law school. By 30, I was going to be a millionaire, and I was going to be then somebody in this world. So immediately he says to me, George, we can't take our money to Colombia, and we know you work for the government. Can you open foreign bank accounts for us? I knew how to open foreign bank accounts because we were involved in an audit of a bank that had a scheme, and we knew that in Grand Cayman, it cost about $700. And I'm like, oh, of course. And they're like, well, how much? Now, I wanted nothing to do with the foreign bank accounts. There was no money laundering laws. There was none of this stuff going on. But my path was clear. I mean, I was like laser focused, and I have been like that since the age of 10. I said, $10,000. I figured they're going to say, oh, too much. And the guy goes, can you open 3? And I'm like, well, sure. I said, I'm quite busy right now, but in the next couple of weeks, I'll get to it. I just needed to figure out how long it was going to take. See, being a Cuban, I've always had the fault that I have never said I can't. I don't think that the word exists in my vocabulary. I think my word is like, I'm not sure, I just have to, if someone's done it, I can too. I just might have to work 3 times as hard, sacrifice 4 times as hard, but there's nothing someone hasn't done that I cannot do. So I began to open foreign bank accounts for them. And within 6 months, I was opening foreign bank accounts to a tune of $15 million a month. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot of money today, but let me try to paint a picture for you. In 1976, you can buy a gorgeous home in Miami for $20. You can buy the car of my dreams, Corvette, for $5,000. So $50 million was a lot of money. They said that during our period, the Federal Reserve Bank in Miami had more liquid cash than all Federal Reserve offices around the country combined. So I began to open, and then my world began to change. Because no more I was hanging around with all my deadbeat buddies at the bank. You know, we used to get together maybe once a week to go to wrestling. That was the only thing that we did. Now I enter into the world of the rich and famous. The people I wanted to be like. The people many of us admire. See, the people we make idols of, athletes, celebrities. See, none of them people became an idol short of you and me making them an idol. And I entered that world, and the second cataclysmic moment happened when I saw a federal judge that used to give people tons of time for any drug offense snorting cocaine. And I said, there's no God in the world, there's no morals. They began to ask me if I could handle all operations in the United States. I made all kinds of excuses, but to fast track, one day I came up with a brilliant idea because it was bothering me. Already I was opening a shipping company for them. We had a banana importation company. And I said to them one day, I figured I got to get rid of these guys. They're driving me nuts. It's like, look, I'm fine. I've crossed that line of the money, and it's fine. I don't feel guilty anymore. You know, like the first time I cheated on my first wife, it was like I couldn't sleep for 3 days. Second time, I only missed sleep one day. After that, man, I even took naps. So it doesn't bother none of us, right? Because that's what sin is. See, nobody starts drinking a gallon of vodka, he's going to die. No junkie snorts an ounce of cocaine or shoots an ounce of heroin the first time, he dies. But we will do enough of it till we eventually do die. And we do, and we progress, because that's how sin is. See, sin is progressive. Because there's only one reason for sin. We have all ways of labeling sin. We can label it some of what many of us struggle with. Pornography. Many of us struggle with alcohol, drugs, They're all the same. All it is a medication and a medicine that we use to try to medicate this hole that exists inside of us that only Jesus Christ can fill. But society is going to tell you, no, I got what it takes to fill it. I'll give you, try this. And I'm not lecturing to anyone because guess what? I tried all of them, except for drugs. Because we had a law in the cartel. You don't use drugs. Drugs is for idiots to make us rich. So I said to them, listen, my brilliant idea, I said, listen, I'll become partners with you, but here's the deal. I want to be equal partner. Now, this is the 4 people that are the most powerful people in the world at this time. I said, I will be the 5th person, and you got to put up my part because I ain't got no money. There was no doubt in my mind they were going to kick my butt all the way from Colombia to Miami. I didn't have to go back on that airplane. And because, who is this snot-nosed kid telling us that he wants to be partner and we got to put up $2 million for his part of the share on every load? So I went to bed and they're like, well, we really got to think about it. I'm like, you really need to think about that because, it is a big decision. And, I don't have no experience. So they go, and I went to bed, and, man, I had the best sleep that night. I thought I was brilliant. I had it all figured out. Next day, they come to take me to the airport. The chauffeur said, Manuel wants to see you. And I'm like, okay, he forgot to give me some instructions about the shipping company we're building. So I went to see him. And when I went to the office, all 4 of them were there. He was sitting behind his desk. 3 partners were there, and they had a chair in between them for me. And they're like, George, please sit down. And I became petrified. I'm like, no, they're not going to tell me no. They're just going to kill me. It's a lot simpler than that. And they're like, we accept. And I was like, literally peed in my pants. I'm like, are you sure? I said, I'm handling your money. You sure you want me to handle your drugs? We trust you. We have full confidence. You're in charge of all U.S. operations. Within 6 months, that kid that had never seen, I'm like, what the hell do I do? I never even seen cocaine. What does cocaine look like? Does it look like sand or does it look like dirt? I have no idea. How do you bring it in? Who do you sell it to? What do you do with it? Within 6 months, at the age of 21, I was U.S. head of all operations for that group that became, 5 years later, known as the Medellin drug cartel. You see, we watched the movies Narcos. We watched American Made. Anybody seen American Made? Yeah. Those airplanes were mine. Narcos, Mexico. Narcos, Pablo Escobar. Anybody seen that? Well, these people didn't come forward till 1982. See, Pablo was nothing but a driver. He was a nobody. When this group of people who were businessmen, who happened to also be very, very Catholic. Manuel Garces, the founder of that cartel, went to Mass every day. He had 2 sisters that were nuns. And every load of cocaine, we would bring 2 kilos, and they were marked with an M for the monjas. Because he told me that we had to sell them and take the proceeds so the nuns could go evangelize the Indians in the Amazons. I didn't quite correlate with that because it was like when he was telling me that I go to Mass, I'm like, well, I don't think that I should go to Mass. I think if I go to Mass, the Mass is going to end because, we sell cocaine 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and then we go to Mass. Nah, it's not for me. I didn't believe in God. I hated God. But, they were very, very different than what became none. Because that's also what happens. See, I began to justify to myself, hey, guess what? And this was a joke. I said, I'm the Kennedy of the 21st century. Kennedy sells alcohol to make people happy. I sell cocaine to make people happy. And at the age of 21, I was making $1 million a month in 1977. I had jets. I had cars. I looked around one day. I had $1 million worth of cars. And then I couldn't understand why I was miserable. I figured it out. I was married to just one woman. See, a Cuban, nowhere in the world he can be happy married to just one woman. Or so I thought. I got to be careful because my wife is here for the first time, so. And we've been happily married for 23 years by God's grace. But I thought, hey, I can't be happy with one woman. So I started dating with the most beautiful supermodels in the world. And then I couldn't understand why I hated them all. The person I adored and respected the most in this world was my mother. Why did I treat women like garbage? They meant nothing for me because in my mind, in my subconscious, they were not able to fill the void that was within me. So in 1979, I wasn't happy with $1 million a month. I got approached by the government of Bolivia, and they wanted me to buy directly from them because during this time, Colombia did not produce any cocaine. It wasn't until late 79 that they began to crystallize. They didn't begin to produce till the 80s. All of it came from Bolivia or Peru. So the government of Bolivia, and I called Manuel, and I said, Manuel, I've been approached by, anybody saw Scarface? Roberto Suarez, the guy that came in to kill Tony at the end, that was who approached me. That was my partner. And I've been approached by them that if I buy a kilo from them at 10, not 20 that we are paying, they will give me one on credit. We can make $7 million a month each, profit. He says, I don't want no part of that. He said, my nephew tried to be smart one day and tried to go buy a kilo. We lost him. After a year of me spending a lot of money to find him, they sent him to me in a box cut up in pieces. I said, Manuel, that can't happen to me. Because you see, I got to a point where I believed that I was God. And it wasn't that I got one day in the morning, I looked in the mirror and said, man, George, you look so good looking. God must definitely look like you. It was that society made me feel that I was God. See, people laughed at my stupid jokes. People praised me. People worshiped me. No one had the guts to stop and say, listen, what you're doing is wrong. My parents had no clue because I had a lot of international businesses. Long story is that, so I go to Colombia and I show the pilots the airstrip. I'm going to Nicaragua because I have a deal that I'm working out with with Somoza. And I get a call from one of my workers who was in Bolivia. He says, you need to come here. They betrayed you. So I get on an airplane, I get up there because apparently all they had was the money I had paid for. They didn't have the cocaine that they had promised in credit. So to me, they had broken the word. So I sit in front of this General Coca, who had overthrown 5 governments, and I tell him, if you screw me again, I will freaking kill you. The guy that was working with me, was next to me, literally puddled the floor with pee. The general looked at me and said, you are the craziest son of a gun I ever met in my life, but you got the biggest set of testicles. Say that again, I'm going to kill you. But see, that's what happened because it took me years writing my book, Coming Clean, to realize I wanted to die. Because if my life had no meaning, if now I had achieved everything the world had and I was still empty, then what is the meaning of living? Existing? So I get on the airplane, run out of time, fly to Colombia, and then as we're getting ready, we refuel, loaded out more cocaine in Colombia, then we're going to Nicaragua where we were going to offload, we were going to refuel, and then I had a business with Somoza, and then he was going to fly me to the Dominican Republic. And we crash landed over the jungles of Panama. When we crash landed, the pilot I had, the guy that Harold Rosenthal, who I hired to transport the cocaine on the plane, he said to me, George, blow up the airplane. Take the flare gun and blow up the airplane. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? That's $7 million inside that airplane. He said, it doesn't matter. We're going to get busted. I said, we're not going to, this is my world. I had just bribed and got elected the president of Costa Rica 6 months earlier with $1 million. I said, look, we're only about 10 miles from Costa Rica. We'll pay these people off. They can't find the cocaine because the airplane nosedove. And then, therefore, I'll make a call. They'll come pick us up, and then we'll figure out where to get the cocaine. He said, are you sure? I said, don't worry about it. Sure enough, the military came. I gave the lieutenant money, and we went to a hotel. I made a mistake. I gave my passport, and I said, get this passport stamped because I'm going to have someone from Costa Rica. We're going to go there, and then so that it shows that we came in illegally. When we came back the following morning, they arrested us. The DEA was there. When they put my name in the computer, the DEA said, arrest him. He's the biggest drug dealer in the world today. So the DEA came and they arrested us. So the Attorney General comes, and I said to the Attorney General, don't waste my time, and I'm not going to waste your time. 2 things. How much to buy the cocaine back? How much to get out of here? He says, Noriega's already sold the cocaine within 3 hours. He says, and $250,000 for you to get out. So I give him a number and a code. I said, call this number, give this code, and you'll have the money here tomorrow. And he did. And the money came, and he came to see me, and he says, I'm going to get everything ready. They're going to take you to the city of Panama. They're going to rough you up a little bit. Once they rough you up a little bit, then they're going to go ahead and deport you. Stick to the following story. You were trading, all you thought you had in there was guns for the Sandinistas. Stick to the story, and it'll give me enough justification. So we're taken to the city of Panama, just like he said. They took us to a room. 4 of us sat back. And all of a sudden, complete empty room, just like this stage was completely empty. And we're sitting up against the back. And they're bringing this kid, about 18 years old, 4'10", 4'11", very, very skinny, handcuffed to his hand and feet, threw him in the floor, and began to stick a broomstick up his rectum, and blood splattered all over the place. When he did that, the pilots broke. Not only did they tell him that I was not a gun runner, I was the biggest drug dealer, but that I had just bribed the Attorney General. They took us to a dungeon called La Modelo. For the next 23 days, they began to beat us day and night to the point that I pissed blood for 5 years thereafter. They would tie us up with handcuffs to our feet, to our hands, and they would come with cattle prods. And I remember one time that they came in with a cattle prod, and they applied cattle prod to our testicles, and we would jump somewhere along between the floor and somewhere up here. We would pass out. And as I passed out, I remember seeing my son. My son at the time was only 6 months old, but in my vision, he was 7 years old. And I see him, and I'm shaving, and he's crying. And I'm like, Jorgito, why are you crying? He said, Dad, because my friend said, my father's not a man. And I made up my mind that moment in time that I was going to die in that jail. See, here's what's interesting, gentlemen. I was not afraid. And I knew that if I died, I was going to hell. So you ask me, or you tell me, how we that have been baptized, how we that claim to be Catholics, how we that believe we're going to heaven are so damn afraid. We're not afraid here, but the minute we step out that door, are we bold enough to tell people who we live for? See, I tell people, I don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, I don't care what religion you are, I don't care if you're gay, bisexual, trisexual, quadrosexual, whatever sexual you are. All I'm going to tell you is one thing. I am in love, and my life got transformed because I fell in love with a Jewish carpenter whose love will soften the most hardened of all hearts. See, the gentleman before said something, not the speaker, but the gentleman introduced us said that we have all this terminology that people don't understand, sacramental, that. But I'm going to tell you one terminology that everybody understands, and that is love. When we love people unconditionally, because the last thing that Jesus said, let me use some of my Ph.D. in biblical theology, so in case anybody from Loyola wonders why they didn't waste all that money that they paid me. The last thing that Jesus said is, a new commandment I give unto you. But see, there's two things about commandments. Two things. Number one, when he says new, means that everything else before is gone. Doesn't matter, because the king has said that is new. And second of all, only a king can command. See, a regular person, a rabbi, anybody cannot give a commandment, might give an order, a general, but only a king can command. And that king said, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love each other as I have loved you. See, I don't know anything about you because I know you guys are pretty saintly, but I was the sinner of all sinners. I mean, if the Bible was written, Paul would never say, of sinners I am the greatest. He would say, of sinners I am the greatest, till Jorge Valdes came along. But I was the greatest of all sinners. But you see, what's amazing about Christ and why I am in love with Jesus and why I am bold about Jesus is because he loved me when I was the scum of the earth. Not now. Not now. When I was a drug dealer. When I didn't give a crap if I saw someone be cut to pieces. I'm like, well, you know, he's breathing good air. He shouldn't. He's a bad guy. Think about life. Think about nothing. And in that moment in time, in that manner is how Jesus loved me to transform me. So there is a word that doesn't even need to be spoken. And it's love. But the question is, in a country so freaking divided, why? The only reason we're divided is because there is no love anymore. See, for love for us is just an intrinsic word. We love our dog, we love our job, we love the Cubs, we love the especially when Michael was here, you know. We love the team then, the Bulls. We just, maybe not so much right now. Same with the Knicks, you know, all that stuff. So we love everything. But see, in English, it's sad that there's only one word for love. That should be I like. We should just get rid of that. Never use that word love. She's like. Because when we use that word love, you know what it means? It means that I will die for you even if I don't know who you are. Because when we were going to hell, we would die for each other. Imagine this. We talk about how Catholics are falling off the faith. Not only Catholic, every religion. Why? Why? Can you imagine this? We built the most powerful criminal enterprise in the world, and this was the two things that I would tell everyone that joined us. Here's your career, buddy. You're going to make a lot of money, and then the end of that career is you're going to die or die in prison. And guess what? People had no problem with that. You know why? Because we were real. The problem with us, not Catholic only, Christians, we're just not real. In the world that is seeking for reality, the world that is seeking for love, just goes right by us. We're just no different than them. So when people talk about how they cheat on their wives at work, or tell dirty jokes, or do this, or do that, we laugh. And listen, don't feel bad. Me, how God changed me, I too fell into that trap. And I too needed to confess. And I too need to confess daily. And I too need to stay on my knees and ask God every day to change me. I got out of Panama. So in Panama, they tortured us. Eventually, it was the pain. See, physical pain doesn't hurt. That's why, you know, when we hit people, after a while, it just doesn't hurt anymore. But your mind starts to go. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I began to tell the guy, tell Noriega that if he doesn't kill me, I'm going to kill him. But before I kill him, I'm going to get his wife and his daughter. I'm going to have them raped in front of him. And then I'm going to have him raped. And then I'm going to cut him all into pieces. Because I knew one thing. He would kill me. And that's what I wanted. Because I was not afraid. I was not afraid of dying. He came the second day. And as I saw him coming, and I didn't see all the goons coming, I thought that was it. It was over with. Because, see, I didn't want to lose my mind like the guy across the cell from me who was there for a year and a half naked, licking the bars all day long. Because that's how they destroy you. So he came in, he laughed. He's like, why are you threatening me? I didn't tell on you. It was your pilot. And by the way, you just paid the wrong guy. So immediately I said, well, how much do you want? He says, $250. I'm like, damn, can't you guys come up with a different number? I just paid $250 for 4. Now I'm going to pay $250 for 2? I mean, come on, say $275, $245. I mean, $250 the going rate in Panama to get out. So the same drill. Here's a number. The next day he come, and they took us to the airport. When I got to the airport, they picked us up like a bag of potatoes and sent us to an airplane to Miami, not Nicaragua, the way that he said. So all of a sudden, we get to the United States, and we're charged with heading the largest drug conspiracy in the world, myself. And I was given the highest bond ever in the history of the United States at that time, $5 million. See, the problem was I had just turned 23 years old. I went to prison. I didn't care. I had a blast in prison. You know, I had a girlfriend in prison. Not a guy, by the way. You know, let me qualify that because that does happen in prison. And I ran the prison. And I got out of the prison, and I was just as angry as before. But see, one thing happened. Very interesting was that my mother, for the first time, found out about me and who I was. And the pain in my heart was so much to see that mother walk up that aisle as they're accusing her son of being the biggest monster in the world. Didn't say nothing. Couldn't hug her. I couldn't even look at her. See, my mother believed in tough love. Tough love. See, my mother from that day forward never started telling me, George, what you're doing doesn't please God. Son, you destroyed our lives. We worked so hard. My dad, your father, cleaned toilets. I picked tomatoes to give you an education. We left our fortunes and our families behind to give you an opportunity. You threw it away. In the same breath, she would say that. Then she would say, son, what do you want for dinner tonight? See, the brilliance of my mom was that she was able to tell me that what I did was wrong, but she had shown me a true north. And she knew that her son and her God was big enough to one day bring her son back from where he was lost. And my mother continued on that way. So when I got out, went back to the same thing, and two things happened very, very quickly. Constantly, my mother, son, what you're doing doesn't please God, doesn't please God. And I'm like, Mom, there is no God. Who is God? I am God. See, I didn't believe in God. And in prison, I didn't believe less, because in prison, everyone wanted to convert me. Well, if you convert Jorge Valdes, you're going to get a Learjet to heaven. Well, the problem was that I used to ask people, well, who is a Christian here? The Baptists say that the Pentecostals are going to hell because Jesus doesn't dance. The Pentecostals were saying that the Baptists go to hell because they don't believe in the Holy Spirit. The only thing that both of them had in common was that the Catholic was the horror of the apocalypse. So I'm like, the same thing that I say to you. I'm like, why would I want to be a Christian like you? First and foremost, there's nothing attractive about you. And second and foremost, you are scared. You are afraid. I'm going to hell and I'm willing to get shot right now. I don't care. You're going to go to heaven and you're scared to death of me sending you there. So heaven must not be that good of a place. And by the way, why would I want to go there? All my friends are in hell. I don't want to be alone over there. Who wants to go anywhere where nobody knows you? And I lived my life, and then two things happened. One, I was supposed to get on an airplane to go to California. When I stepped on it, I began to throw up and vomit, throw up and diarrhea. Anyway, I couldn't get on the airplane. I told Eddie, my right-hand guy, I said, Eddie, you take the plane. I'll go there next week. When he got there, they killed him. They killed him because there was a contract on my life. They were waiting for me, and they killed him instead. At the funeral, his little daughter said to me, she was the same age as my daughter, and she said, Godfather, my daddy went to be with Jesus. And it was the first time in my life that a tear rolled down my eyes since I left Cuba at the age of 10. I said, for two things. Number one, if there is a Jesus, we sure as hell ain't going there. And number two, when will I tell my daughter that? Or when will my daughter be telling that to someone and never see me ever again? 2 months later, my ex-wife drops off my daughter at the ranch when it was not my week to visit. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, I told the maid, keep her in her bedroom. I had a 14-square-foot room. I would give anyone $1 million if they could get within 10 feet of me. Somehow this little girl got out and began to knock on the door and said, Daddy, it's Crystal. And it was the first time in my life that I felt filthy and dirty and corrupt, because he was the only thing that was sacred in my life, knocking for her daddy. And it's just, imagine if you're looking out and your daughter's going down the water and you're touching her finger, you can't hold her back as she dies, because I was filthy and corrupt. If I opened the door, I would contaminate her. And I said that day, and this is what we all need to learn, as we struggle and deal with things in life, and we realize, all of us need to know, all of us realize that we need to change from what is wrong in our life. We don't need the Bible to tell us that to kill, steal, and cheat is wrong. We all know that. The question is, how do we have what's in it to make that change? Well, for Jorge Valdes was that if I'm going north, I'm going to go south. If I'm going east, I'm going to go west. I made a phone call that night, and I told my mom, I'm done. And she's like, tell my father, Bebo, Jesus answered my prayer. I said, Mom, you're crazy. It ain't Jesus, it's Crystal. Jesus has nothing to do with this. Or so I thought. I called the cartel the next day. My desperation was so horrible to change. When everybody in the world wanted to beat Jorge Valdes, and I wanted to die, that I knew I had probably 2 weeks to live. See, unfortunately, we just didn't have that good of a retirement program in the cartel. and they were just not very friendly when it meant dealing with the unknown. And their theory that the dead can talk just was pretty effective for them. I didn't give a damn. I hired a guy to teach me karate that you saw there. For 3 years, he starts telling me, the first day he comes, he says, I'm going to teach you about the sword. And I'm so happy because he's going to bring out a sword, and he turns around and has a Bible. And I'm mad out of my mind. And I'm like, sir, I'm paying a lot of money to teach me karate. I don't believe in that sword, so tomorrow you take that sword and bring the real sword. He was the first man. First man. And I wonder how many of you all would dare do that, to get up in my face and say, young man, what I got to give you, you got no money to pay. See, it was a 7th-degree black belt. I reached for my pocket. I didn't have my gun. I realized quickly, as an accountant that I thought I was, that he was going to begin to introduce Jesus to me by kicking him into me, and I was going to pay for it. So I'm like, hey, dude, don't get excited. Don't get excited. While the steam room is heating up, waste your time. And people always wonder, what did he say that changed my life? And I'm going to tell you what he said that changed my life. Absolutely nothing. Because it was what he did. I saw a man that lived in what I consider a little crappy world. 1,200 square foot house. Mine was 15,000. My guest house, 5,000. Drove up an old beat up car. I had $1 million with the car. I had jets. I had house on the ocean, house in Vail. And he was happy. And he told me he was happy married to the same woman of 25 years. And I thought that was insane. She must be 45. There's no way you can love a woman after 25. But he was. And for 3 years he didn't falter. And I'm going to tell you something, my brothers. Just remember this. You might be the only Bible someone ever sees. And ask yourself, we all talk about going to the mission field overseas and all that. Listen, I don't believe any of that crap. I mean, good for those that do. But I'm going to tell you something. The biggest mission field in the world is right here in America. It's right here in your family. It's right here in your workplace. It's right here in your neighborhood. We have to go nowhere. We have to raise no money. All we got to do is love them and show them that we are different, because the Jesus that lives in us fills that hole within us. When my book came out and Random House threw a big party in Miami, his wife said something to me. She said, I never said this to anyone. She said, you know, it was about 3 years Tim was going to see you, and one night he couldn't sleep. And I didn't know what was wrong. I said, honey, what is wrong? And she's like, Derek, I can't go back there anymore. She says, I didn't know how to answer. All I said is, Tim, listen to the Holy Spirit. And she's like, Terrico, you don't understand. The Holy Spirit's telling me to get the hell out. Tim, listen to the Holy Spirit. Terrico, this guy I've been preaching to for 3 years. He's gone from worst to worst. Tim, listen to the Holy Spirit. Terrico, we talked about the Antichrist. It's a Cuban. He's already here. He's here in that ranch. I ain't going there anymore. And he laughed. And she said that when his car got up to my gate, it stopped for the first time. And he had never heard this happen before to him. Well, he never told me that story back then, because I was telling him, dude, just buy a better car. It won't stop. And he said that he heard the voice of God. I said, Tim, who are you to give up on George? I have not. Think of this. We love fast cars, fast movies, fast women, and fast conversion. How many of us are willing to spend 3 years impacting the life of a lost soul? Because I'm going to tell you something. Forget about all of us. Forget about all the priests. Just for one sinner, Jesus would have gone to that cross. So if Jesus would have gone to that cross for one, how about you? How about me? Three months later, I gave my life to Christ. July 1st, 1990. My little daughter was being dragged away by my ex-wife as my divorce was final. I went into my room in such desperation that I got on my knees and I said, Jesus, I don't believe you're real. I don't believe you exist. And if you are, you're probably looking at me and say, George, you're so bad, just stay down there. But if you're willing to save me, to give me what he has, I'm willing to die for you. And I'll spend the rest of my life telling people about you. You think things get better when we make a conversion or when we change our life? Well, sometimes they do, but most likely they don't. They get worse. Because, see, there is one thing about God that we need to understand, people. We need to understand that God cannot be understood outside of his just and his mercy. See, God gives us mercy, but he is a just God. And if he was just to reward us for our goodness and forget the bad, he's just a merciful God. But God ain't just merciful. He's also just. 3 months later, I got arrested for things I had done years before. I walk into the U.S. Attorney's office. My attorney is waiting for me, and he's like, George, we're going to walk out of here because the only witness against you last night killed himself. It was one of those guys flying those planes you saw in American Made. That's what I was being charged for, those planes. He said, that witness got killed himself in the fog in a DEA plane. So say you're innocent and we're gone. I looked at him and I said, hey, Alan, you won't understand this, my friend. Here you are, a good Jew that I love and I've known forever and ever, and I paid you millions and millions of dollars, telling me I'm going home. But you see, I given my life to this other Jew, And the sad thing is, that Jew ain't saying nothing. But the thing about that Jew is that I believe that I need that Jew to change my life. And if he doesn't change my life, I don't care if I die anyways. I've been dead for so many years. And I can't go in there and tell those people that I am guilty. I'm innocent. I am guilty. He said, if you say that, you're going to die in prison. So I walk in there, and Jeff Sessions, you all know he was U.S. Attorney General. He said, it's real simple. Lots of money, little time, little money, lots of time. So you know how much I got? He says, no, but I know who does. He went to the back of the room, opened a door, and in came 4 federal agents and knew how much toilet paper I consumed. And they wanted it all. And I tell people, you know how long it goes from having $50 million to being dead broke? About 3.5 minutes of signing. That's how long it takes. And I remember I went into my cell, and I pled guilty, and I went into my cell, and I was in a daze. I hadn't eaten for 2 days because they arrested me in St. Louis. And I remember this gentleman screaming out, Milky Way, Milky Way. I didn't realize that in Macon, Milky Way, in Mobile, Alabama, that was a big commodity in the prison. And all of a sudden I realized, man, I don't have $1 to buy a Milky Way. 3 hours earlier, I was worth $16 million. And I lay in this steel bunk, and all of a sudden a little sheet of paper out of a pocket Bible that I still have falls on me. And it says, highlighted on Hebrews 11, rejoice at the confiscation of your goods because I got better riches for you in heaven. See, I didn't care if I was going to die in prison. I didn't care that subsequently to that, within 30 days, I'm told that my father, my hero, the man I love the most on this earth, is diagnosed with cancer, is going to die. My wife, my ex-wife, takes off and disappears with my children for 2 years, who was my life. And I'm looking at dying in a prison. By God's grace, I got 10 years, which is what I should have gotten because it was what I owed the government when I left the cartel. And I went to prison, and I made myself believe that I was in a monastery. And I got a bachelor's in prison, and I got half of a master's from Wheaton. Came here to Wheaton, and by God's grace, met my beautiful wife, finished my master's, got a Ph.D., was named the Hispanic doctoral student in America, and I was one of 5 Ph.D.s, Hispanics in Bible. I was recruited by every university, and suddenly I realized that I can't put 6 kids through college. So my wife and I started a little business. And in 10 years, I built it into a multi-million-dollar international company, and then I retired, and I quit to dedicate what I was called to do the rest of my life, to tell people about the love of Jesus. Because, see, words from a man didn't change me. It was seeing that love that transforms each and every one of us, that love that will look right through your heart and pierce you, that love that will fill all the emptiness, that love that will pick up an addict and make him whole, that love that will take a pornographer and wash all that sin from his face. See, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to close with the following. If you want to know the beauty of God, you need to go to a prison so that you can appreciate freedom. You need to go to a hospital so you can appreciate your health. And you need to go to a cemetery so you can appreciate your life. And remember, the floor you walk on today is going to be the ceiling you walk on tomorrow. And we are so afraid about everything. The truth of the matter is, Jesus says, be not afraid. I'm going to tell you this. If you don't believe that, then go sin. Because I don't know how much sin you've done, but I had a lot of fun sinning. I'll be honest with you. But it was empty. It devastated my family, devastated my kids. And it took 20 years for God to put my life whole again, and to give me meaning, and to give me purpose, and to give me direction, and to wake up every morning full of joy knowing that, listen, today might be the last day of my life. We are petrified over this coronavirus. Petrified. I ain't petrified. I don't give a damn. People say, hey, your Ph.D. is in apocalypse. You know when Jesus is coming? I said, I don't give a damn when he's coming. And they look at me like, what? I said, I don't. You know why? Because I know that in my life, I'm going to see him. And that's all I live by. Knowing that, my brothers, today might be your last day. I'm so glad to hear Father say you all confess, because we do need to be right with God. Don't let every day and don't let another day go by without impacting the life of someone. everybody out there is hurting. I promise you. Everybody's out there hurting. Come clean. Open yourself up. Share your pain with others so that they can find a space to share theirs with you. I'm going to close with a real quick story about this old gentleman that his wife died giving birth. And he was a fine art collector. He loved art, and he taught his child about art. And one day his son tells him he wants to go to the war in England. And he was devastated because that was his only child. All that was left in his life with any meaning. One day he sees a soldier come to give him a piece of paper. And when he opens it, he says, "What is it?" He says, "It's a painting that I did of your son. He got off the helicopter, picked me up to save my life, and got killed." And he gave him the painting. And the gentleman framed that painting, and the painting gave him meaning. And one day he died, and there was a big auction. And people came from all over the world because they wanted to see the Picasso, the Rembrandt. They wanted to see all those wonderful masterpieces. And the old man and the auctioneer says, "Before the auction begins, we must sell the painting of the son." People got irate and mad. "How? Get rid of that garbage. It's worthless, some stupid drawing. We want to see the masterpieces." And the gardener starts walking towards him. And he says, "I'll buy it. I got 5 pounds. That's all I got." But he was a decent young man. And he takes the painting of the son. And when he does, the auctioneer hits the gavel on the auction block and says, "The auction is finished." You can imagine the noise and the uproar. And when he quieted everyone, he said, "In this gentleman's will, it says that he who takes the son takes it all. If you take the Son of Jesus, you take Jesus Christ, the Son of God, my brother, you take it all." God bless you. Have a wonderful day.